Hello, and welcome to a special post-election episode of Conservative Corner. I am your host, Shannon Carey, and today I have with me our elected state reps, Lisa Mazur, Ross Berry, and Joe Alexander. Welcome back to Conservative Corner.
Thank you.
All been on before.
Yes, it's fun to be back.
And a very special congratulations to Ross. I know you moved from Manchester, so I am very happy that Goffstown and Ware residents have decided that they see you as an asset.
I'm glad to serve. Won both towns. Super excited.
Yes. So it was a red wave across the board, I would say, not just nationally, where Trump won the Electoral College, the popular vote. He made gains with different demographics, but in Goffstown in New Hampshire, we made a lot of gains. And kind of swept a lot of different things. So what do you guys think was the driving factor of that? Was it single issue voting? Was it a culmination of things?
I think affordability is probably the biggest one. When eggs are $4 or $5 a dozen, people feel that, you need a second mortgage to go to the grocery store these days. And you kind of had this gaslighting campaign from the other side going on saying everything was great, everything is fine, it's all just in your head. And everybody just saw through that. And when they're looking at that and they're looking at who's in charge down in DC, and they know in Concord, Republicans can't accomplish their agenda because they're basically stopped in a almost gridlocked situation in the House. So they kind of threw out the people that caused that problem, and they've given us a mandate to go and address it. And we've got some bold ideas to go do that, and now we actually have a majority to go and get it done.
How many seats did we actually pick up in the House and the Senate?
So we went from technically 197 to 222. We were at 201 at the last election. Through via attrition, we got down to 197. Then we were back up to 222.
Okay, and how much easier does that make it to get things done?
Well, if you think about the committee structure the way they were, when you have an evenly divided House, you have 10 Republicans on a committee and 10 Democrats on a committee. So if you want to pass an amendment, you need 11 votes, and sometimes it's an amendment that the Democrats don't like or the Republicans don't like, and then you can't even amend a bill that you can't even fix a bill that you necessarily want to fix because the other side can block that movement. And then on the House floor, you have to count how many people are in the bathroom for 2 years. So it makes it nearly impossible to know who's in the chamber at the right time. And unfortunately for Republicans, they like to go home at 4 o'clock in the day. So
none of the ones here do. There's
we're there.
group.
I was going to say, I know you guys are there until the end.
There are certain Republican reps that like to go home later in the day, and then next thing you know, the Democrats are in the majority. So hopefully this time around with 222, we don't deal with those problems. We have a working majority. We have a speaker. We can accomplish our key priorities, but the priorities that the voters sent us to do. I mean, we have 10. We have a contract with New Hampshire that we laid out. There's 10 things that we're really going to work on as House Republicans. And so, we're happy to lay those out here. But also I'm just saying the being able to accomplish things has gotten a lot easier now with 222 members.
Okay. All right. So then I would go to things like the different bills that I watched, I would say almost kind of flounder in the State House. And one of the big ones, and I talked about a lot with you, Ross, when you were on, was EFAs. So we talked about how a lot of proponents look at EFAs as stealing from public school education. And I felt like there was a lot of misinformation surrounding that kind of whole topic, especially since it turns out it was saving taxpayers money. What do you say to the people who, when it comes to expanding EFAs for the entirety of the state, that it'll bankrupt the state? Because I've heard that, I've seen that in different news articles and whatnot, that it's going to weaken the public schools and it's going to bankrupt the state.
I mean, we can't afford not to do it. It's, to your point, it saves the state a lot of money. So I think the first time we were on, I think it was at $150 million. I just saw the latest calculations, $220 million to the local taxpayer across the state. So it saves a lot of money by removing a child that would otherwise go to public school. The average cost of a public school system in the state of New Hampshire is around $21,000. The average cost for a private school is anywhere between $13 or $14. So that gap alone kind of reduces the amount of total spending on education, and obviously the part that the state puts into the to school funding for public schools is very small compared to what the local funds. So if you're removing that child and the state's picking up the tab, the local school will actually benefit because they're still getting the vast majority of the funding, and they've lost virtually the entire cost of educating the child. So it's one of those deals of, I think it's a program that's worthwhile, and I think you should fund students, not systems. And there's really, all of the arguments against it are kind of straw man, scary arguments. And the reality is parents are already taking their kids out of public schools. The enrollment numbers across the state are down. And it's not that we have significantly less children, it's just parents are finding other ways to educate their children. And I think as elected officials, we have a responsibility to respond to what they're saying, which is, hey, I might like my public school, but I've got something that's better, and I'd really like some help. And I think the state, we can help with that. We have a duty in the state constitution to cherish education, and that's what we're doing. We're fulfilling our constitutional duty and responding to the will of the voters.
And to add on to that, every student's needs are different. So we're seeing this on the Goffstown Budget Committee level, where there's a certain student that might need a need, but they can fulfill the need outside the district using an EFA and save the district money by not using the resources at the school district. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of special needs students that are utilizing these education freedom accounts, so that it is saving the taxpayer money. And a lot of the times those needs are, not you can't monetize those needs necessarily because they're out of the district. But if they came in, we'd be able to talk about exactly how many OTs or PTs that we would need to fulfill the needs of the students. So we support the student needs in different areas of the state, and they should be allowed to go to different schools if needed. So.
And I think the misconception out there is if you are for EFAs, you are anti-public school. And that's just not the case. It's that we want options for every child, and we want parents to be able to make those decisions. So they know their child. The public, we don't know every person's individual child. They know what's best for that child and where they will thrive educationally. So this is just giving people more options. And it doesn't mean we're anti anything, which that's what, they try and drive that out there right now, but that's not what that is all. I went to public school my entire life.
I did, yeah.
Not my entire life, until I.
You were a student of life.
That would be a bummer.
You were a student of life.
Yes, but no, I grew up in public school and had a great experience. I mean, times were different then, of course, but but it wouldn't be the same for everyone, and that's why we need to move forward with this, because we were given a mandate to do so.
I think that's some of the misinformation I've seen on social media recently, was that there was a graphic someone had posted, and it was these state reps want to dismantle public education. And I'm
Yeah.
I know all those state reps, and they know I have a kid in public school. They don't want to defund my child's school. They want, any conversation I've had with each of you, it's been about, we just want every kid to succeed. And I know you said on your episode, the public school system works for a majority of kids.
Yeah.
And that's why we do need to fund it. But what about kids that, my son's in a charter school, and if I hear, I'm sorry, our superintendent say one more time, they get way more in state adequacy than we do. It's but that's all that they get. That's all that they get. They get no property tax dollars from Goffstown. They get no property tax dollars from Manchester or those sending districts. They get the state adequacy, and that's it. Yet their education is more rigorous than what we're offering here. But somehow that's not the bad guy.
Yeah.
You're the bad guy. That's how it works out. So would you say, I know New Hampshire school choice, it's actually looked at as a benchmark throughout the country. I've seen on Fox News, MSNBC, different places where they've talked about this is kind of the model people should be going after. Do you think that you would be able to pass the EFA? I know you guys wanted to raise it. So do you think you would be able to get that through and signed into law? Do you think in doing that, it jeopardizes any of the other school choice options?
Well, so we've come out and said we support universal EFAs. Governor-elect Ayotte ran and said she supports universal EFA. So the problem's not the House. The problem's not the corner office. You got to talk to your friends in the state Senate. And
Okay.
we'll obviously, this is going to be a priority for us in the House for sure. And, giving parents choice, empowering them, putting students first is a Republican ideal. So, you're going to see this come out of the House. The question is what's the state Senate with its supermajority going to do? So, call your state senator.
Call your state senator. Okay. And do you think if universal EFAs happen, that in any way it would jeopardize any of the other school choice options? Because I envision, someday it being back more to a closely divided house, and it's like, okay, well, you got your universal EFAs, we're going to take away this choice or that choice to kind of make up the difference, I guess.
Yeah, I think like, any other government program, it's really hard to get people off it when they're on it. So when we expand this out and people see how great it is, if they go and try to take it away from parents, they're going to have a problem on their hands come the next election. So they might try. We might unfortunately get to a closer House one day. I hope that doesn't happen, but historically it has. But I think they would be very foolish to mess with all the mama bears and papa bears out there and try to force their child back into what they view as a subadequate education.
Yeah, I would agree.
And let's say EFAs did go away, people will not stop homeschooling their children or sending them to other, options. It will just take away that little bit of funding that they would have to put towards that. But in the end, I don't believe it will change their minds on how they choose to educate their kids. Because Democrats did try that last term. They tried to take those away. And there was one bill, they filled up the legislative, the LOB building, like 400 parents and families showed up, couldn't house them all because the Dems went on attack against, homeschoolers and people who were choosing other options. And thankfully, the person who put the bill in saw what was happening and withdrew the bill, which I've never seen before. And I thought that was pretty incredible. So that's when people do speak up. It's good that rep chose to listen, and I hope they do in the future. I hope that from this last election, that the Democrats do a little bit more listening, because even from just a few weeks ago, I haven't seen things, just change much. And I'm like, are you listening to what the people have asked us to do? And I think if they don't, they're in big trouble. And so we'll see.
Time will tell on
Yeah,
that
this
one.
is a subject that people care a lot about, though.
Yeah.
And I hope they do listen.
So there were some other bills that were defeated last year, like some of the transgender healthcare bills, the bathroom bills, boys and girls sports and that kind of stuff. Do you think the House is going to take those things back up? Do you think they'll bring them to try and move them along? And what do you say to the families that are concerned about not being able to access like transgender healthcare, for example?
Yeah, well, I think with the boys and girls, first of all, we passed the boys and girls sports. It's held
Yeah.
up in the courts. We did pass that. That was
Yeah.
enacted by law. The only thing that what didn't get enacted was the quote unquote bathroom bill. And I think with a lot of this, it's an issue of fairness. And I can't speak for everybody up here, but my general mentality on the whole, transgender issue is 18 and up, I really don't care what you do, so long as you're not invading women's spaces. It's your body, it's your choice, do what you want to do. But when you start going after the kids, which has been kind of this weird obsession of theirs as of late, is to really go after the kids at a really young age, that's when we are going to we're going to have a conflict on that.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to apologize for standing up for women's spaces. I'm not going to apologize for sticking up for kids. Adults can be adults, and I have no problem with that. They can do whatever they want, but you're not going to tell parents they have to teach the kids a certain way. You're not going to go in and take that, very extreme ideology and cram it down on kids. It's just not happening while we're in charge.
It's like what I said before about public school. Just because we're for kids and we don't want to see, kids gone after in this way, doesn't mean we're anti this community.
Right.
So, and that's another thing that they try and push along too. But it's, the parental rights issue we lost that by 4 votes last term. That's coming back again because we don't think that schools should be keeping secrets from parents. Big no. And yes, all the other things that you mentioned, the bill that the governor vetoed is coming back again. Because we did hear through this election and door knocking, parents do not want biological men in their little girl spaces and in their sports and taking opportunities away from their daughters. And we have never had that in our history before. I remember, when I was in school, that just didn't happen. And, I was given opportunities, to go to college and scholarships and things like that. And now people say it's not happening. It is happening. They are being
100%
taken
is.
away.
It is.
There's so many stories of that happening. And that's, I consider myself a conservative feminist in that area. And I would have never called myself a feminist before. But now I feel like our roles are all switching around, because the Democrats said they were the party of this. And now but no, you're allowing this to happen. And so, like Ross said, it's not on our watch. So.
Your thoughts, Joe?
I think we need to further empower parents they know their kids best. And if, the parents decide that this is, they want to know what the curriculum of what their children are learning, they should be able to learn. They should be able to know. I mean, this whole controversy last year with the bulletin board in the middle school, that's curriculum. Like anything in a school is curriculum. So why didn't the public know about this? Why did the parents know about this ahead of time? I think that parents have a right to know this information, and we're going to make sure they know it.
Yeah.
Parents first.
I couldn't agree more. This parent's happy about that. So switching gears a little bit, the whole housing crisis. It is not just a New Hampshire problem. It's a nationwide problem. What exactly could be done at the state level to help ease the lack of housing we have?
I think I know somebody that can help with
I
this.
wish, yeah, no,
I wish there was somebody.
I wish there was somebody who knew about housing.
So I led the special committee on housing last year, and we really looked at multiple solutions to the housing crisis, because it's not a silver bullet. I know we always say silver bullet, but there's no silver bullet solution to this housing crisis. So we really solicited input from different areas of the housing community. So developers, but realtors, planning officials, code enforcement, the whole gambit. And I think what we came to the conclusion is we need to balance the right to own your own property and the right to build what you want on your own property, and to make sure that what you're doing on your property is not violating the health, safety, and welfare of somebody else. And as long as it's not doing that, you should be able to build what you want. So I'm talking accessory dwelling units, manufactured housing units.
Chicken coops by any chance?
If you like your chicken coop, you can keep your chicken coop. Okay, that's the
I like to
quota.
hear that. That's good.
You
I like
can
to
have
hear
as
that.
many chicken coops as you want, but as long as you're being respectful of your community, it's zoned agricultural. There's a balance there, but
Yes.
you should. The problem with the housing crisis is there's no movement, right? You have 1 to 2 people living in large single family homes because they have nowhere else to downsize. There's a missing middle of a diversity of different housing units. So you're talking ADUs, but also townhouses, manufactured housing parks, things like that. I mean, Medville Cooperative is the best example of this is a great place. It's a community for retired people that they can go and settle down and be in their own community. And they have a bunch of services right near for them to access. So we need to be encouraging more of that. And sometimes the town gets in the way, or the local government gets in the way. So this is all about balance, right? So we need to make sure that if the town is overreaching, we claw some of that power back, because government works in a way where federalism, we have to sometimes fight against each other to make sure that we're giving people the best opportunity we can.
So would that be an example, what you're talking about, would that be an example like the Hadley Falls project that happened? So my understanding of it is the Hadley Falls project is what's down. They just, was it 99 units or something like that? So it's valued at over $16 million. So they should be technically paying over $300,000 in property taxes. But there was an RSA that the select board was able to vote to use so that I think it's either 5 or 7, I don't remember the year, but it's either 5 or 7 years. They basically are paying property taxes based on a valuation of a little over $600,000. So they're paying $11,000 a year in property taxes for 5 years. That doesn't even cover 5 students in the town of Goffstown. So is that what you're talking about when it's like kind of holding them accountable at the state level? Like, is that something that?
Well, I don't blame these developers for wanting to make money, right? Because the idea is Republicans believe, developers are going to develop. If they want to develop, they will. But the problem that they run into is you have site plan evals, you have driveway permitting, you have DES, wetland permitting. Like there's a bunch of BS, right? Like a bunch of different hoops you have to jump through to get there, right? So that's why housing's so expensive. Like, they're going to build 99 units and they're all luxury. It's because they can't afford to build anything else because there's so much happening. There's red tape on the local level. I mean, I have a bill in that basically says that towns can't be more stringent on the state code than the code. Like the code is the code, right? Like the state goes in and says like, this is what you need to be safe. And this is what you need to be fireproof and things like that. Like, and then towns go in and say, you know what? I don't want that type of housing. So I'm going to make up a different code ordinance in the way to block a particular unit to be built. And that's what we're trying to prevent. We want to make it as fair as possible. I mean, like developers are like kids in candy store. Like they will build if they are given the opportunity. So I don't blame them for wanting to make money. I think the select board could have negotiated something better for the community, but I'm not a member of the select board.
Yeah, that would not be a law. I mean, I know it's on the books. That wouldn't be a law of support. I don't like tax favoritism or giveaways. It's unethical, and I'm sorry, it just is.
Yeah.
To say we're going to give you a break from your taxes if you do this thing.
Because we're all picking up that
Correct.
cost.
That's right.
As residential homeowners, I'm picking up that cost. My taxes have gone up over $900 this year. And that could be very well part of the reason why. And I agree with you, like, we need more housing. We need to be able to incentivize to a point. But when it's at the detriment of the taxpayers, I can't tell you how many seniors on a post, I said something about this. There were at least a dozen that said, we're working on getting our house ready to sell and move because we can't afford to live here anymore. Residents who have been here for 30 and 40 years are having to leave because they can't afford to be here anymore.
And I think it's that, though, on top of everything else, like the number one thing is affordability on every level.
Yeah.
Because everything else is skyrocketed, that makes, paying these taxes even harder than it was several years ago, too. So, hopefully if we can nip some of that, then...
And we have put it so that next week I don't know when this is airing, but next week we're going to announce basically a package of bills that Republican leadership in the House is bringing forward to begin to try and slow this problem down, because so much of it is a local issue.
Yeah.
And there's only so much the state can do, but that doesn't mean the state can do nothing. So things that we're going to look at, having that tax bill show where the increase is coming from. So
nice.
So you as the voter can know, oh, it's not my town, it's not the county, oh, it's the schools. I need to go to the school board, or I need to go and talk about the school budget, about why we have this, insert ridiculous increase here, right? So another thing that we're going to look at is for towns that use a ballot to vote for the school budget, we're going to look at presenting certain information right before that question on the ballot. So we're going to look at average cost per student, enrollment numbers for the last 5 years, and the teacher to non-teacher staffing ratio, so that voters, when they're making these decisions, can have some information before they're checking that box to approve that new budget. And there's some other things that are in the works around default budgets to try and bring this cost down. I know one of the things that's a big deal is if you reject the proposed budget, you still get a tax increase, which is insane.
Yeah.
So there's a bill coming forward that will allow for the default budget to be a continuation of the existing budgets, because your option shouldn't be a big tax increase or a little tax increase. Your option should be a tax increase or no tax increase. And by the way, sometimes those tax increases are justified on the town level. Sometimes they are. We're seeing, I think right now, that they're not. But we really do need to address the fact that the option shouldn't be how hard are you getting hit. So we have heard about this. We are doing things about it. These are going to be some kind of big changes, and you're going to see a lot of pushback from the people that try to run the towns and the little fiefdoms, because we are going to break those up a little bit, and we are going to empower people with knowledge and hope that they go and, if more people know and they're more knowledgeable and they're making more informed decisions and they still vote for the tax increase, that's democracy at work.
Yep.
My thought process is, if you kind of put a spotlight on this thing, that it might slow down a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of town meetings recently. It's funny you talk about what the state needs to do something. Just because you can't change everything doesn't mean you shouldn't do something. But it amazes me. I've seen the blame placed on the state reps all the way from the school budget to our local property taxes. And I'm like, I wasn't aware that my state reps voted on how many admin positions were in the SAU, or I wasn't aware of that.
And salaries.
Yeah,
salaries,
I
yeah.
pay attention to this stuff, and I'm like, I didn't know you guys had anything
Yeah.
to do with that. Well, so considering you don't control the price of housing or our town budgets or the school budget for that matter, what do you think can be done at the state level to try and help lower, taxes for people without adding an income or a sales tax? Because I know, or is that the only way to really go about it?
I mean, there's a lot of ways. I mean, obviously it's a Dillon rule state, so we can really, depends on how hard you want to push down. You don't want to get to the point where you're completely disrespecting local control. Conversely, I have an issue with, these town elections are very, very low turnout. Sometimes they struggle to crack 20%. And when you have 20% turnout, that means 10% of the people are actually making the decision for 100%. So I think that's something that we have to address. I've got a policy proposal I'm going to roll out next week along those lines about setting a minimum threshold for something to pass. I'm going to increase that a little bit just so that a small minority is not exacting its will on the majority, because a lot of the times the people showing up at these elections are very self-interested. So, and the people who are getting hurt by it, they don't really understand what's going on. All they know is they just got this tax bill and, oh my God, how are they going to afford it, right? They don't understand the difference between county and town and the state can't really do stuff, but it can sort of, but not really. And the county's really, really small. And then you start cracking up, it's like, oh my God, it's the schools. So, and then of course, all the pro-public education people come out of the woodworks and start accusing you of things that aren't true. So, and you see them kind of peddling their lies already, they're saying, oh, the state's downshifting costs. My favorite thing to ask is, name them. But please name the things that we've downshifted. I would love to know what they are. Please name them. And don't just give me a kind of generic topic. Give me the items that we have downshifted, because I will tell you right now, I will go and I will reverse that downshifting. Because, by the way, downshifting without funding is actually unconstitutional in New Hampshire. We can't actually send down an unfunded mandate. So when they throw that line out, the first thing to ask them, and you'll never get a straight answer, is name the thing that was downshifted. Name the cost, the actual cost that you incurred that was downshifted from the state. It doesn't exist.
I think the one I see that the most is with the school board.
Yeah.
I'll see a lot of, it's another unfunded mandate. And I don't remember, I asked one of you, I was like, what do they mean when they say like unfunded mandate? And maybe it was you and you were like, ask them what it is.
Yeah, you have to ask them what the, and some of it, now to their credit, some of it's federal. But we can't, you got to call Chris Pappas. Some of it's federal, it's not us. And that's a fair criticism. But when they say the state's downshifting, I'm not aware of in the last 4 years of us passing a bill that downshifted actual costs.
And to add on to that, like there's a spending problem on the local level. Like we need to look at why they cut in the next budget, there's a Bartlett teaching position being cut, and it's going to go towards an administrative position. Why? Why are we cutting teachers and adding administrators? This is a problem. The budget committee only has a little bit of say, right? Because you have the school board. And unfortunately for the school board, they somehow like to protect themselves instead of appointing people that would really have a good say in 30-year teachers from Bedford, like some really great candidates to be on the school board. They'd rather protect themselves, and they're like, I don't know, I feel like it's protectionist racket or something. It's like their own little control. But
club kind of thing.
It's less than 30% of the population in Goffstown elects some of the most radical people that could be elected in Goffstown. And then you have 85 to 90% of the voters come in and elect Republicans across the board. It just goes to show that like maybe we do need to look at thresholds to approving budgets and further ballot transparency and things like that, because like, the local level, it's really hard when you have such low turnout on those elections.
If people want tax increases, they should show up and vote for them.
Yeah.
Like if that's what they want, they should. But when no one's showing up, and you're getting these tiny turnout elections, and the first thing they do is they run the taxes up, and then they gaslight you about the taxes going up. So it's It's time for the games to end.
Yep.
Take accountability. The school board doesn't want to take any accountability. They need to take accountability. They never look at any sort of cost saving. The very first thing they do is they stick it to the taxpayer, and then they blame someone else.
And you can see that right now. So like you, I've been watching all of the meetings, the school board budget committee meetings
yeah.
now, because they are talking about the budget.
Yeah.
And it's crucial that people watch that, because what I've noticed is when, they're looking at line items to cut to try and bring things down. Well, every time it's mostly conservative people that are mentioning, we really should cut this. And you'll see right away the radical, more liberal people on the committee are like, nope, and here's why we can't do that. Every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see every single cut is people that lean a certain way of, we have to fix this. And the other side, they're saying the same thing, but their actions aren't a part of that. So that's what I'm noticing, is that, oh man, they need to dig way deeper and listen to the people that voted to them, or they'll be out next time. Because Goffstown has pretty much shown in these last 2 elections, even the last local election too, that they are waking up more to this now, and they are paying a lot more attention than they have the last few years, and realizing how we got into this situation. And hopefully, especially last local election, we had better turnout than we've
Over
ever.
30%.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is huge.
Yeah.
And the budget failed.
Yes.
So weird that more people voted and the budget
And
failed.
that's what happens, and then, we're trying to do a better job even at getting information out to people. So, because not everyone goes to the town website, not everyone's on Facebook or social media pages that they can see this stuff. So it's trying to find the best way to get this out to people so they vote accordingly.
But then I would guess, because in the past couple of years, I really started to pay attention, and I do show up to vote in local elections. I do show up to vote for national elections. I feel like I'm a very informed voter. I'm not a single issue voter. I want to look at the whole big picture. It all plays to each other. But then you see things at the local level that feel like they're done kind of backdoor, which the school board's a prime example. Somebody had stepped down. We don't have to go into that. Somebody had stepped down, fine, whatever reason.
We can go into that.
No, I'm happy to go into that.
There's a bill about it.
I actually filed a House bill to deal with that.
So that's what I'm wondering.
It's now a
Somebody
state
stepped down, and technically, in my opinion, it should have gone to the next highest vote getter. And instead, it went to one of the most radical thinking people that I could imagine to be on the school board. And then, I get filled in on some of the meetings that I can't attend. The library board. All of a sudden, there's people that they weren't even on a ballot.
Nope.
They were an alternate, and now they're a vice chair of something. It's wait a minute, that wasn't the will of the people. That's not, I don't care if it was 5% or 50%. Whoever showed up to vote in those elections did not want those people.
Yeah.
So why are they now magically running boards and doing things?
Yeah, it's cronyism at the local level. It is. It's
The most irritating I'm pissed. And the reason why is because this all happened in a smoke-filled room.
Thank you.
Right? So
Yes.
the whole appointment of the last person on the school board happened in secret. It happened
public.
behind closed doors. Not even the public could know the reasoning behind
No.
why this person was appointed over somebody else. That's my problem, is we need to be way more transparent about why we're appointing these unelected people. And we need to respect the will of the voters.
Yeah.
I strongly believe, whether it benefits me or not, the next highest vote getter in the previous election should be the one that gets asked first.
And Jared Talbot on the school board, when they did the interviews for the school board, each person that came in, are you okay if we talk about blah, 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 blah publicly? And then he said, the reasoning I did that is because I don't want this discussed in non-public. The voters have been telling us they want us to be more transparent, and they still went into non-public. And it was well, now we'll never know why this person was picked.
I reviewed the statute about why they can go into non-public. I cannot find their justification, any justification that they could have used. It's not a personnel matter, right? It wasn't a matter of negotiating a contract,
Yep.
right? So, and they weren't receiving legal advice.
Nope.
Those are the 3 reasons you can go into non-public: personnel, union negotiation contract, and then receiving legal advice. they were picking their replacement.
Yep.
That's a public office.
Yep.
It literally should have been in public. So, they may be teeing themselves up for a lawsuit, but,
And the voters blatantly said no to the person that they
Yes.
appointed in the last local
Yes.
election.
And I'm not saying that person's a bad person at all. Like, I don't know that person well enough to know, like the content of their character. But just from the things that person had spoken about,
Ran
it was
on.
like, what that person ran on.
The
It was
voters
very,
rejected.
yeah, the voters
I will
rejected
also
it.
say, serving with this person, we'll just say Lauren Dukas on budget committee, she didn't vote for a single budget cut in her 3 years or 2 years on budget committee. So that also, like, not that makes you a good member or a bad member, but like every single time a motion was made, she would make the argument why it's a bad thing. So like,
And I don't
like,
get that. On the budget committee, it's not your job to advocate for the budget. It's your job to hold the town and the school's feet to the fire to say, why are you spending this money? And all the budget meetings I've watched, I saw you try to bring up like a certain admin position. My husband brought up cutting the school board stipends. It's like you guys would bring something up and the other members of the committee are advocating for the budget. It's like, that's not your job. That's why there's a school board rep. That's why there's a town rep to advocate.
And the craziest thing I saw too was the people that are looking to cut things. Then after the meeting's over, a certain group of people go online and start attacking
Yes.
the people that are trying to cut some line items. And even during the meeting, they kind of go dig at them a little bit. Well, you're this, and
We don't need
alluding
political
to
grandstanding.
yeah,
It's
that
like,
you're that, and then they do and say things to the people that, number one, the voters elected to do the very thing that they're trying to do, and then they go after them. And I don't think that's going to work out well for them in the future too, because it's the more negative now that people are going on social media, which seems to be the thing lately, is I feel like the more people are seeing that and rejecting that too.
Yeah.
Of this is what it is, and they're doing it every other day, and we're tired of it. So it's time for something new.
Yeah.
and we're going to do it at the state level. No one wants to. Cutting spending does not make you the good guy normally.
No, it doesn't.
So, but it has to be done. We're probably going to have a tough budget year in the state house, and I can assure you, tax increases are not on the table. So, we're not going to be. We're going to be making hard decisions in Concord, and it's okay. And I'm okay facing the voters and saying, we cut X, Y, and Z because I didn't want you to have a sales tax.
well, and also, so the town of Goffstown, almost every department budget went up high single digits, if not low double digits. On the state level, we're telling every department 4% cut across the board. Cut 4% because we're going into a tough budget cycle. Why isn't this happening on the local level? I don't know.
we have to
Especially
do it
after
in our own homes.
and especially after the voters rejected both budgets. Like, you would think that everybody would come forward kind of with a lower budget, and I think the school did that a little bit better than the town did. But I still, like, because I sit on budget committee, I'm not really willing to comment necessarily about the final budget. But I think that what we're talking about is like, we need to look at, there's a lot of increases happening on the town side. The school is kind of holding a little more steady there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so off the topic of money, I guess, if there was one bill that each of you could bring back up, like from last term, what would it be and why? We'll start with Lisa.
Oh, gee. Well,
I think we know what it is. Go ahead and say it. Go ahead and say it.
I mean, for me, it's parental rights. So,
Okay.
and isn't that funny? I'm not a parent. I mean, it's not people like.
But doesn't mean you don't care.
I get jabs about that all the time, but I have extended family who have children. I have nieces and nephews that I can see, and I have cousins that have children in public school and beyond, and they're going to be affected by this. And this is for everybody. They are our future. So the decisions that we make now and the things that we take away from parents, which has been happening, will affect these children in the future. And so that was, I literally last term, I know whatever, I'm an emotional being. But I walked out of that state house and I just cried because it was like 4 votes.
Yeah.
And it's
So
like,
close.
oh man. But I was excited to see it's like, boom, where it's right back there again. And there's many others. There's several others that we lost. I mean, I sat on Health, Human Services, and Elderly Affairs. So they came right through my committee. And so, I had a passion behind them because many times I was the one who went to the well and spoke about a lot of them. And some we won, some we lost, but I see that most of them are coming back again. So we'll see what happens.
something that's near and dear to my heart to go along with that. And I don't go to the well means like to speak at the State House.
About the
I don't
well,
go to the well often about non-housing related things. And I did go to the well one time for an education bill because I told my story about what it was like to be bullied as a gay kid in public school.
I remember that.
And
That was powerful.
about how like if given the opportunity, maybe my parents would have utilized an education freedom account to get the bullying to stop and go to another school. And I think like to have universally 100% of the House Democrats tell me that like my story's not valid was like kind of a whack in the like a whack in the face. Like
Yeah.
like why am I not valid
Yeah.
for being bullied? And and so I would bring up, I mean, we're gonna have universal school choice hopefully after this term, but like I would have brought up that bill again and been like, okay, so bullied kids that are sick, kids that are like sick with COVID, if they test in the bottom percentiles, like these are like the most marginalized children in public schools, and Democrats wanted to keep them trapped there.
Yep.
And so that's why I would have brought it up.
That's a really valid point.
Yeah, it's one of my good ones.
So I definitely would say parental rights, but I won't go to say that again. So definitely
Well, you're
parental
a
rights.
parent, so-
I am a parent, yeah.
Yeah, you are.
But for me, actually, I did file it. It's finally finishing the battle on bail reform. So this has been actually, Joe and I have been involved in this. This has
Long
been like my war for 4 years is getting rid of cashless bail. So I did file for full repeal this time. So the first time we kind of like beat it back a little bit. The second time we were in deadlock, so we like kind of tinkered around the edges. And this one I was like, no, I'm going to fire the missile at it. So the cashless bail system, PR bail, it's not really an issue for Ware. It is an issue for Goffstown. And it's this revolving door of people getting arrested and they're back out on the street in an hour, and our police desperately want it. And it was one of those things that was super well intentioned, but I was on record at the time saying this is a bad idea. And everyone's like, oh, you're crazy. I was like, oh no, turns out I was right. So trying to get rid of that system of just releasing people instantaneously is something that I want to see done. I imagine that we won't get full repeal, but I think we'll get it pretty hedged back to what it was actually intended for, which is, people who don't really have criminal histories, who can't afford bail and are not accused of a serious crime.
Right.
Those people can get cashless bail. But if you're already out on bail, if you've got a long criminal history, if you've been accused of a violent crime, you're not getting PR bail. It's not happening. So, we haven't had the majority, I think, that we've needed to really get to that point, but I think we do now. So I'm super excited about that. That'll have a big impact, especially like Penardville. Basically, the closer you get to Manchester, the more impactful that law will be, and keeping criminals where they belong, which is in jail, instead of just back on the streets. I mean, you had horrible cases of people, being arrested for DV, they're let out an hour later. And
Oh, wow.
And they go home and what do? They hit their wife again, and it's like, oh, who could have seen this coming? Oh, anyone who thought.
Yeah.
So within that bail bill was written very poorly. It basically refused to acknowledge the crime in which they were accused of, and it also refused to acknowledge the impact of the community of potentially releasing that person. So it was all about, are they indigent? And there was no standard for being indigent. Elon Musk could have been arrested in New Hampshire and declared he was poor and would be given cashless bail. And they,
sorry.
It was true.
I believe that it's true. It's just
It's true.
You just had to file a form.
You just had to file a form saying I'm poor, and they let you out. And obviously, they didn't really look at the circumstances of your arrest. So you had people who were sexual assault. I think there was a guy that got murder, got PR bail. Like, it is insane, the stuff that gets PR bail. So yeah, I filed for full repeal on that, and I'm not in any which way going to back down on it. I'm going to keep pounding at that thing until it's done.
Nice.
I look forward to seeing how all this plays out. So I want to, in the spirit of unity, I want to, end the episode on that note. throughout the election season, I felt like there was just a lot of misinformation, name calling, bullying, targeting. And I felt like it crossed so many lines, like to the point, I know like your extended family was dragged into some of the stuff that was happening online. It just, I don't understand that. But what do you think, in the spirit of unity, what do you think moving forward Republicans can do, Democrats can do, to kind of move past the hurt, move past what happened, forgive, move on, so that things can actually get done? Because I feel like that's some of the gridlock is the ideological differences, and it's almost like the Trump orange man bad kind of thing, where they're so hateful of him that they don't want to see what he can do. And I feel like there are some instances of that happening within our own little Goffstown community. So what do you think we can do to move past that?
There's a lot of like noise out there, right? Like in a lot of the times that I feel like I wake up every week and there's something online about me, and which is fine. Like I have thick skin, but like there's also like a lot of noise that people don't really know how well we actually work together in Concord. Like I have such great relationships with Democrats in the State House on housing, but we're also sponsoring a booze bus, which is like alcohol related, some policies, things like that. Like just like we like go to karaoke together sometimes. Like there's like some really cool things that we do together, and we're friends, and like we don't take it personal. Like sometimes like we lose a vote and it might be tough, like parental rights, tough, right? But at the end of the day, we're going to go back and we're going to keep trying until we get there. And I think a lot of people in the Goffstown community don't realize how well their particular reps work across the aisle on specific issues. Like there's going to be some that we just don't agree on, right? But like at the end of the day, like we do have some key issues that we do work together on well.
Yeah. And our system is set up, just to that end, our system is set up to display the conflict.
Yes.
The things that we agree on go on consent calendar, and they're voted on first, and they're done in like 2 minutes.
Yep.
Yes.
So 70% of our bills are handled within the first 2 minutes of gaveling in, and they receive zero fanfare. And then everything else you see is the stuff we disagree on. So that's why publicly it looks like this.
And it's in the news.
And it's in the news with the cameras, because there's actually a political show going on.
Yeah.
So, I always kind of remind people is, Democrats, everybody's people too. We all have families, we all have feelings, and no one likes to be drugged through the dirt. But there's going to be issues where we are going to fight, and I'm not going to apologize for having those fights. And the big thing is to Joe's point, is don't let it spill over into other things. But we're going to fight tooth and nail on parental rights, and I got news for them: we're going to win that fight, and we're not going to apologize after we win that fight. We're not going to go and be like, oh, so sorry, maybe next time. It's like, no, we won, move on, and we'll go to the next thing. So it just kind of it is like that. I think the other thing that'll be helpful is with an actual majority, there won't just be this constant grind. I mean, I called it trench warfare. When I first saw 201, I said, this is going to be trench warfare, and it was. It was 2 years of trench warfare. There's no more trench warfare. It's now, we're in charge. We're going to get the things that people sent us to get done. And I think that will actually bring the temperature way down as people just accept that not everything is going to be a battle that can be won or lost by somebody going to the bathroom.
Yes.
And what I've heard a lot online recently and beyond is that, Goffstown's become so divisive.
Yeah.
And things have become so, and I agree. But at the same time, what I see is that for a long time, conservatives, this is conservative corner, conservatives have just kind of sat on the sidelines and watched and, went to work, did our thing, minded our own business. And then all of a sudden we saw, ooh, man, things are starting to get uncomfortable and we need to start standing up for ourselves more. We're not doormats. So I think that's what started happening is we started showing up to things more. The school, the
bulletin board stuff,
the bulletin boards, all that. And after that, we just started to stand up more, and we're not going out and attack. When we put things out on people that are running for something, we usually use like their own words, what they said. We're not making anything up about them. It's what they have put out there to the world that we are just, putting back out. And there are times where when people attack me, I'll double down on something if I know that, I'm doing something for the right and good reason, especially when it comes to protecting kids. And so I'll never apologize for that. And
Nor should you.
No.
Well,
But
I mean-
like Joe said, I have a lot of Democrat friends too, and we're high-fiving each other when we see each other in the house, and it's not anything of what they think it is sometimes. So
It's good to know.
yeah.
Good to know. All right. So then we're all going to move on. We'll just move on. Well, thank you, Representative Mazur, Representative Berry, Representative Alexander.
Actually, he's Representative-elect Barry
Yeah.
because he's not a state
Yeah,
representative.
I got like
you
one
were
more
a
week.
state rep.
One more week, and then you'll get it
were
right.
a
She did it the
state
first
rep.
time too.
Because I knew he was Representative
And we
Berry.
have 3 more coming along too.
Yes.
Yes, we do. Well,
Yeah.
how about we just say thank you?
Yes.
Does that work?
Yes.
Thanks for tuning in
Thank
for
you.
this episode of Conservative Corner.